I'm 38 years old, living in Yakima, Washington. And for the past 11 years, I've been running a custom woodworking business out of my garage. Cabinets, tables, doors, you name it. Over that time, I've built up my tools, my skills, and my clientele. Everything I own, I earned through long hours, hard work, and quiet discipline. I'm not flashy or loud, but I take pride in what I've created. I met Marlene when I was 28. She was the type of person who could light up a room, laughing loudly, talking fast, and never caring what others thought. She appreciated my steady nature and said I was different from the usual losers she dated. I wasn't much of a talker, but I was a good listener, which suited her just fine. We got married 2 years later. At that time, she had a decent job in insurance. Not amazing, but it paid the bills. I handled most of the house repairs, car maintenance, and groceries. She enjoyed going out while I preferred to stay in the garage. Somehow, it worked. Everything changed when Marlene's brother Connor came to stay with us. Connor was 25 and recently out of a tough situation in Portland that he never really explained. Marlene said he'd gotten mixed up with bad roommates, couldn't hold down a job, and needed a fresh start. She wanted him to stay just for a short time, until he got back on his feet. I wasn't thrilled. I've never been close to my own family, much less hers. But I didn't want to start a fight, so I agreed on the condition it would only be temporary. Connor moved into our spare room and immediately started acting like he owned the place. He left dishes in the sink, took forever in the shower, ate anything in the fridge, and never once offered to replace anything. He didn't even bother looking for work. Instead, he spent his days lounging on the couch, watching TV, or playing games on his phone. At first, I tried to be polite and patient, giving him space and time, but things got worse when he started going into my garage. That garage is mine, not ours, not a family space. It's my workspace. It's where I think, work, and have spent thousands of hours building something out of nothing. The first time I noticed something was wrong, I came home and saw sawdust on my workbench. I hadn't been in there all day. Then I spotted one of my clamps moved and a chisel left out of place. When I asked Marlene about it, she said, "Oh, Connor's messing around with a wood project. He said he used a few tools." I told her, "He can't use my equipment. It's expensive and dangerous." She brushed it off, saying, "He's just trying to build a table. It's harmless." That really pissed me off. Harmless? One wrong move on a bandsaw and you could lose a hand. Some of my tools cost more than his entire car. I went to Connor and clearly told him not to touch my tools without asking. I reminded him the garage is my work area, not a hangout spot. He gave me a fake smile and said, Yeah, no problem." The next day I found my finishing brushes ruined, glue spilled everywhere, one of my chisels missing, and the whole floor looked like a tornado had hit it. I was furious. I stormed inside holding up the ruined brush and asked Marlene, "Are you serious? Your brother is destroying my workshop." She barely looked up from her phone and said, "He's just trying to build something. You don't need to make a big deal out of it." A big deal? That brush was $40 and half a $100 bottle of glue was wasted. Then she said something that flipped the switch inside me. "You think you own everything?" I just stared, stunned, unsure how to reply. Then, almost quietly, like she didn't want to say it aloud, she added, "You're not exactly irreplaceable." That hit me hard. It hit me like a punch I never saw coming. I didn't say a word after that. Instead, I went outside, sat down in my truck, and just stared at the garage, at everything I had built. That night, sleep wouldn't come. I kept replaying her words in my mind. Not irreplaceable, like I was just another piece of furniture, like none of it mattered. I got up at 5 a.m., long before anyone else was awake. I backed the truck up to the garage and opened the door. Standing there, it felt like I was walking into someone else's home after it had been broken into. I took everything, every tool, every saw, every bit and blade, all of it. I loaded it all up, drove across town to my storage unit, and unloaded everything into the backup workspace I'd set up just in case. By 8 a.m., the garage was completely empty. But I left one thing behind. I went to a friend who owns a print shop and had a sign made, big block letters on a black background that read, "Not yours." I screwed it right onto the garage wall where my workbench used to be. Then I went to work like nothing had happened. By noon, my phone started blowing up. Text from Marlene. "Where's all your stuff? What the hell is going on?" I ignored her. When I got home, She was waiting in the living room with her arms crossed. Connor paced behind her, his face flushed red. "You seriously emptied the garage?" she snapped. "I took what belongs to me," I said. "You didn't even tell me. I didn't think I needed permission. You said I don't own everything, right? So I figured I better hold on to what I do." Connor jumped in. "Dude, you're being psycho. I barely used anything." I looked at him. "You wrecked $300 worth of supplies and lied about it." He shrugged. "It's just stuff." Marlene stepped between us. "You're making this bigger than it is." I told her, "I built that shop with my own money, not yours, not his, mine. I didn't complain when you asked him to stay. I didn't complain when he ate our groceries or left messes. But that shop was mine, and you both crossed a line." And then she said it again. "You're not irreplaceable." That night, I walked out. Quiet. No yelling. I packed some clothes, grabbed my laptop, and left. That was only the beginning. I crashed on a cot in the back of Kevin's print shop that night. Kevin's a good friend, someone I've known since high school. He didn't ask questions, just handed me a beer and said, "Stay as long as you need." I didn't say much, but I think he could see it in my face. I was done. 2 days later, Marlene showed up. She didn't call or text, just pulled into the parking lot while I was sanding a new table. She walked in like nothing had happened. "You really want to do this?" she asked. "Throw everything away?" I didn't stop working. "You already did." Her face twisted like I'd slapped her. "You're being so dramatic. Over a couple tools." "That couple tools is how I make a living. You let your brother steal from me and called it harmless. He's family, and I'm not." She looked down, silent. I finally set the sander down. "If it had been the other way around, if someone touched your stuff without asking, wrecked it, and I defended them, how would you feel?" Still no answer. I stepped closer. "You let him trash something I built with my bare hands. You made excuses. And when I said I'd had enough, you told me I wasn't irreplaceable. That's what did it." Her voice cracked a little. "I didn't mean that." "Yeah, you did. And you still haven't apologized." She left after that. No tears, no begging. Just walked back to her car. But Connor? That clown tried to call me later that night. "You took everything," he said. "She's freaking out. You happy now?" I hung up. The next day, calls started coming in, from mutual friends, neighbors. Word was spreading. Marlene was telling people I'd overreacted and abandoned her. She even posted a vague message on Facebook about feeling betrayed. I stayed silent. Instead, I focused on rebuilding. Kevin offered me part of his back room to convert into a temporary workshop. I brought my tools out of storage, started taking on small jobs, and slowly, old clients came back. One even told me, "Heard what happened. You handled it right." But the real surprise came 2 weeks later, when I got an email from a guy named Dave. We had worked together a few years back on a kitchen remodel. Now, he managed a downtown property with an available commercial space. Used to be a boutique store. He said, "Saw your story on Facebook. I've got a spot. Cheap rent. Interested in moving your shop out of the garage permanently?" I met him that afternoon. The place was perfect. Big windows, tall ceilings, and enough room for every tool I owned, and then some. For the first time in a while, I could see what the future might look like. I signed the lease within a week. Meanwhile, things at home were falling apart. Connor had no job, no money, and no tools to finish the coffee table he'd started. Neighbors began noticing the empty garage and the arguments. One even messaged me privately. "Is everything okay over there? Marlene's brother was screaming in the driveway the other night." I told her I wasn't living there anymore. Then the real storm hit. I got served. Marlene filed for separation and demanded half of our property, including the value of my tools, my business, and even partial ownership of the shop I had just leased. She clearly didn't understand how business ownership worked. She thought that since we were married, she could claim a share of everything, even things I'd bought years before we met. But I had receipts, proof of every purchase, every transaction. My business account was separate. I had done everything by the book. My lawyer laid it out clearly. She doesn't have a case. If anything, she might owe me damages. That's when I decided to fight back harder. We filed a countersuit for loss of income due to damaged property, and we named Connor. That's right, I sued my own brother-in-law for using and destroying professional equipment without permission. The lawyer said cases like this were rare, But we had enough evidence, photos, texts, witnesses, to make it stick. After that, Marlene went silent. No more texts, no more Facebook posts. Connor sent me one last message. "This is war, dude. You messed with the wrong family." I didn't reply, but I saved it, because if he thought that was war, he had no idea what was coming. About a week after we filed the countersuit, I was working on a custom oak desk, laying out panels, when Kevin poked his head into the back room. "There's a woman out front asking for you. Says her name's Jenna." I didn't recognize the name. I wiped my hands and walked out front. Standing there was a woman in her late 30s, short brown hair, business clothes, holding a small folder. She looked nervous but determined. "You don't know me," she said, "but I know Connor. Or I used to." She opened the folder, revealing screenshots of texts, emails, and a couple of court documents, restraining orders, one from Portland, one from Vancouver, both filed against Connor, different women. She was one of them. It turned out Connor had a real history, not just laziness and freeloading. He'd been kicked out of housing multiple times for threatening behavior. One restraining order was still active. She said she found my name through an old tagged photo Marlene posted, a picture from our housewarming years ago. She'd seen my name again in a private Facebook group where local women warned each other about dangerous or manipulative men. Connor's name had been mentioned 3 times in the last month. I was floored. I asked, "Why are you here?" She said, "Because I saw the story online about your tools, the sign. People have been sharing it around. I recognized him immediately. I figured if he was still hurting people, someone needed to know." She left the folder with me and said, "I hope it helps." And it did. I handed everything over to my lawyer. This wasn't just about tools anymore. It was about someone with a pattern of hurting others, and Marlene had brought him into my home, then defended him. My lawyer added the evidence to her case file. She said it might not directly affect the property dispute, but it could influence how the judge viewed character and credibility, especially if the case went to a full hearing. A few days later, I got a call from Marlene. It was the first time since we filed. I didn't answer. Let it go to voicemail. Her voice was shaky. "I think we need to talk. Things got out of hand. I didn't know about Connor's past. I just wanted to help him. I didn't mean for it to come between us." I played the message for my lawyer. He nodded and said, "She's realizing the damage." But I didn't call her back. I didn't want words anymore. I wanted results. Meanwhile, I got another surprise. One of my old clients, a guy named Rick, reached out. He ran a local contracting business and said he'd seen my story and wanted to help. "You ever thought about teaching?" he asked. "We've got younger guys coming in who don't know their way around real tools. They're just YouTube trained. You could run workshops out of your new shop, charge for weekend courses. I'd send guys your way." At first, I hesitated. I wasn't a teacher, but something about the idea stuck. I started planning, built a few extra workbenches, and put together a simple beginner course. Basic joinery, safety, tool care. Within a week of posting it on Facebook, 12 people signed up. Half were hobbyists. The other half? Young guys trying to build careers, people who respected the craft. The shop started buzzing in a new way. I was rebuilding not just my business, but my community. On the legal front, Connor finally showed his true colors. He didn't just respond to the countersuit. He filed one of his own, against me, claimed I'd physically threatened him, said I bullied him out of the house, said I created a hostile living environment. All lies. My lawyer laughed out loud reading the paperwork, but it meant we were going to court, real court. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about truth, about everything that had been pushed under the rug for years, and it was about to come out in the open. Court day came fast. I wore clean jeans and a button-down, nothing flashy, just respectful. My lawyer, Bruce, told me to stay calm and stick to the facts. "You don't need to impress the judge," he said. "Just let the truth do the work." Connor showed up in a wrinkled suit, smirking like it was a joke. Marlene sat behind him, tight-lipped and avoiding my eyes. When it was my turn, I told the truth. How I built that shop from scratch, saved every dollar, bought every tool myself. I explained the damage Connor caused, how I warned him, and how I left when I realized I wasn't respected in my own home. Bruce presented receipts, pictures, texts, even the voicemail Marlene left. He showed the judge the folder Jenna gave me and pointed out the active restraining orders. Connor's face changed when that came up, like he finally realized this wasn't going his way. Then Connor took the stand, and he lied. Said I threatened to beat him with a hammer, that I screamed every night and kept weapons around the house, that I made Marlene cry all the time. He even claimed I tried to sabotage his career. When Bruce asked what career, Connor stammered, said, I was going to be a furniture designer. Bruce handed him a paper. Is this the cease and desist letter you received from a local business owner after trying to sell knockoffs of his copyrighted designs? Connor froze, then mumbled something nobody could hear. The judge asked a direct question. Did you live rent-free in the home? Yes. Did you ever pay for the tools? No. Were you told not to use them? He hesitated. Yes. Then Marlene took the stand. She looked tired and pale. She said she didn't know about Connor's past and that she only wanted to help her brother. But when the judge asked her about the "you're not irreplaceable" comment, she tried to say I took it out of context. Bruce played the voicemail again. The courtroom fell silent. After both sides gave their closing statements, we waited. A week later, the verdict came in. The judge ruled in my favor on every count. Marlene got nothing from the business, no share of the tools, no claim to the shop lease. Instead, she was held partially responsible for the damage Connor caused, assigned joint liability. The judge ordered Connor to pay $28,000 in damages. He didn't have the money, so the court froze his bank account, garnished any future wages, and placed a lien on his tax returns. But that wasn't all. The court also reported his false statements under oath to the district attorney. 2 months later, he was arrested for perjury. It turned out he was already on probation for something in Portland. Lying in court violated that probation. He was sentenced to 6 months in county jail and warned that another charge would send him to prison. After the case ended, Marlene sent me one last message. None of this would have happened if you hadn't taken the tools. I didn't reply, because it had to happen. Things had to fall apart for me to see the truth. But here's where it all paid off. Remember that woodworking class I started? It took off. The local paper ran a story titled "From Dust to Respect: The Craftsman Who Rebuilt Everything." Within a month, I had waiting lists for my workshops. I hired 2 assistants and opened the back room for apprentices. And the best part? That original sign I made, the one that said, "Not yours." I framed it and hung it on the front wall of the new shop, right next to the entrance. People ask about it all the time. I tell them the truth. Respect matters. What you build, what you earn, what you protect, it's yours. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I never spoke to Marlene or Connor again. Last I heard, she moved in with a cousin in Tacoma. Connor? He's flipping burgers in a strip mall an hour out of town. Tried to start a GoFundMe to pay his court fines. It raised $37. One of the comments read, "Maybe don't steal from the guy who knows how to cut people off clean." I didn't write it, but I smiled when I read it. Because in the end, revenge doesn't always come with fire and screaming. Sometimes it comes with silence and an empty garage.